there really
係
a need to be looking at it to look at the evidence? Is it just a question of the government you can decide to bring in a new law?
Well, the Home Secretary will want to look very carefully at this, and want to look at the evidence that already has been collected and look at the circumstances, not just of what happened yesterday, but of other incidents as well. We are seized by the seriousness and the importance of this. You will be aware we have made a manifesto commitment to halve violence against women and girls in the country every 10-year period. That's a process that will be led by the Home Secretary, Ted Cooper, and supported by our colleagues. Both of them had a professional lifetime of experience and commitment in this area. So these are the most we do need to look very carefully at what's happening and take a view, but I know that the Home Secretary is on it, and we will move as quickly as we possibly can to reach a judgment about whether we do need to amend the system.
好塞車啊！因為
Crime does seem very high on the political agenda. At the moment, we're hearing that the government is planning to release prisoners early in order to solve prison
應該話
overcrowding.
我呢邊去 A47 嗰度兩條拎咗晒，你嗰邊咧就
always have to ensure that public safety won't be put at risk. The first duty of any government is to keep the public safe. That is our primary responsibility, and we are seized by the importance of the responsibility of fulfilling those commitments. We've all just worked our way through an election where collectively we've had thousands of conversations with members of the public during that
So
campaign.
you know it's very important, but then you're having to make this, I guess, pragmatic decision to let prisoners out, not having said 50% of their sentence will be here down to kind of 40%. So what if someone who's released early offends them?
So we inherited a situation where our prisons are in crisis, and across government, led by the Secretary of State for Justice Shabana Mahmood, decisions will be taken in the near future about how best to proceed. But all of those decisions will be very carefully informed by the guiding priority, which is public safety. We need to keep the public safe. We will always have to keep the public safe, but we'll have to make decisions in the coming days about prison population. Those rest of it, my colleague Mahmood.
I did also, before we let you go, wanted to ask you about international security, given the NATO summit that's on in Washington at the moment. What kind of conditions has the UK government put on Ukraine in terms of using British missiles on Russian territory?
Well, firstly, let me say how seriously we take our commitments to NATO. NATO is the bedrock of our security here in Europe, and we are absolutely committed to the alliance, the most successful military alliance in history. And we are completely cognizant of the importance of the situation in Ukraine, not just of Ukraine, but for broader global
security. I understand, but I'm asking about the specific help that the UK is giving Ukraine, and on this question of the use of missiles. And you understand what I'm asking, because there is obviously a fear of escalation.
你可以玩，但係唔好成日做 international training。你將來好慘。In the future, you have no direction. You don't know what to do. Like if you want to do the stuff you want to do, you don't have the skills anymore.
So I guess we're all around this whole thing. It's some really incredible goals. It's just a special moment for Ollie Watkins and the team at that point to get into
Win the final, go. Win the final. Where were you when we win? 啊，哥哥，你喺出邊做咩㗎？嗰時喺 England 嚟㗎嗰時。Yeah, what were you doing? Huh? Huh? Doing what stuff?你新地爸爸要做嘢，你同媽咪記住睇個翻到。
Yeah, it's interesting about that point about getting to the final and I suppose just making that slight mental difference. Southgate's record over his 8 years in charge includes the 2018 World Cup semi-final, a final, Euro 2020, the World Cup quarter-finals in 2022, and now again into the Euros final. Does it feel like they are ready to take that next step and lift that trophy? And again, we talk about experience, they've got that experience behind them now.
Well, of course, the Spanish don't say Spain are ready to take that next step as well. They want three, they've got that experience. It comes down to the game, it comes down to a bit of luck. It comes back to a bit of luck that we've had. So the 96 minutes equalised by Jude Bellingham, into the penalties, and of course the last minute winner. So you need a bit of luck, but you know that Spain are going to be consistent. But of course we have good individual players, and that's what really made the difference for us. We haven't played well throughout the tournament consistently, but we've got good individuals who, when called upon, can do something, so that will always give us a chance.
Are you at all jealous of what this England team are about to go through this weekend?
Well, not at my age of 16, I'll get tired walking on the stairs. You know, had I been a 31-year-old and just left my face in the squad, or had just retired, then possibly. But at my age now, I can't even remember what it was like to run around. But I'm proud of it.
Yeah, I think we all are. Sit back and enjoy it then on Sunday instead. John Barnes, thank you very much for your time this morning. There's also a major England performance at Lords yesterday, cricket, and there was an excellent performance from Wes Atkinson in particular. He took 7 wickets at Lords on day 1 of his first test against West Indies. It was today with the 41-year-old Jimmy Anderson's family and fans who had to say farewell to the fast bowler. It was though the 26-year-old Atkinson who had a test debut to remember. West Indies all out for 123, England 199 for 3 in the finals, a lead of 68 runs. And as you mentioned, I am at Wimbledon on centre court. Very precisely in the right place for the women's singles semi-finals today. The 2022 champion Naomi Osaka faces the former French Open champion Barbara Krejcikova and the 17th and there will be a British man in the men's doubles here at Wimbledon with the Scots against Britain's Henry, who is playing alongside Finland's Harry Henry. The sun is some fairly miserable weather here. There's plenty of influence and stuff to see at this point. Well, thank you very much. No.
I need some reflection slash my conversations with a couple of figures who've stepped away from the front line and can talk frankly about success and failure, judgments that are right or wrong. We're going to have a former President of Ireland on the world stage, First Minister of Northern Ireland, who was handed unexpected and election result. A Labour big beast saw it all, and first of all, maybe the most enigmatic Conservative, Michael Portillo. Once a leader in waiting and a famous election casualty, he talks about ambition and fame, and the distant joys of power, and the day in Whitehall when he cried. Reflections begins just after 9.
Yes, Jim, I think you named the guessing along the way. And a look at the weather. Today was dry in the northwest and south and sunny spells. Early rain in eastern Scotland. Clear, but it will remain quite clear.
You're listening to Today on Radio 4 with Martin Carver and Nick Robinson at 27 minutes to 9. Caroline Nichols is second.
The King has congratulated England's men's football team after they beat the Netherlands 2-1 to secure a place in the final of Euro 2024 against Spain on Sunday. Sugar from the University of Manchester told us the manager, Gareth Southgate, was the rock of stability. His achievements with the young team amounted to an attempt to build a new workable version of the English identity. The regulator Ofwat has given water companies in England and Wales provisional permission to increase bills by 21% on average over the next 5 years. Figures vary by region. Southern Water will be able to increase bills by 44%. 44%? Customers will pay 13% more. A Democrat senator has joined
That argument will rage by the next 6 months.
Let us turn to the consumer Simon Jack. Thanks very much indeed. Morning to you, Martin Lewis, founder of Money Saving Expert. Before you give people maybe some hints of what they can do, how important are water bills in the finances of many households in Britain? How big a factor is this in what we often call the cost of living crisis?
Well, there are hidden bills. Of course, the problem in the water industry is we have privatisation, but we have no competition. And so when we have the prices, regulated prices, it's quite a perverse type of utility. So they can be much bigger than people think. You know, there's some people who are getting 4-figure bills when it comes to the water bill that's coming into their house. And it does have a big impact, but most people think there isn't much you can do about it, which isn't right. While there is no competition, the big thing that you need to look at if you are in England and Wales, like Scotland, and they don't have water bills in Northern Ireland, is whether or not you should switch to a water meter. Now, rather strangely, your water bills are still based on the old pre-1990 rateable value of your home. It's the rate system that dictates your water bills, which is a proxy roughly for your home's rental value, which is a proxy roughly for your home's value. And if you think that's wrong, there is no right of appeal. So if you think your rateable value is too high, you can't ask for it to be lowered like you can with council tax, so that's a tricky thing to do. So of course, bigger homes pay more. So if you think about it, if you and I were lucky enough to be flat shared, what an amazing house that would be, and there's 2 of us living in a 4-bedroom home, our house would have a big rateable value, but we wouldn't be using much water and sewage, so we'd probably be better off than the water meter. And my rough rule of thumb is this: if there are more or the same number of bedrooms in your home than people, you are probably better off on a water meter. There is a calculator at the Consumer Council Water where you can go and see that. But just to give you a clue, a family that emailed my website back in April and said thank you, we've moved to a water meter and our bill has gone down from £119 a month to £25 a month. It's a savings. Big savings. If you're in a big house and there's not many of you, the savings will be big. So that was the immersion last week of Consumer Council for Water. We've got a lot of people guys up here, which is there are some technical things about, you know, do you get new shower heads for each of there's loads of stuff in there. If you can't get a water meter fitted, ask for an assessed charge bill, so you can't, because they have shared pipes, which effectively works out what you would pay on the water meter. Then very simple, if that's cheaper than the rate, then switch to it. If it's not, don't. Very important, 5.7 million eligible households missing out on a social tariff, so those on universal credits or low household income. Firm by firm, different rules. Look at the social tariff, much cheaper for many. Also, if you have 3 or more children or a medical condition like Crohn's and eczema, and sometimes if you have benefits too, check out the separate WaterSure scheme. If you are on a water meter, go to Save Money, Save Water, hundreds of thousands of freebies to cut your water usage. And then if you are on a meter too, and even if you're not, remember, use less water, less energy bills,
lots of things like people have water butts in their garden to collect water and put it in their loo. And I'm sure you know this in the executive washroom at the Today programme. There's the old adage, if it's yellow, let it mellow. If it's brown, flush it down. A rule some people, not me I have to admit, some people live their life by when they want to cut their water bills. I think that's probably a good place to stop.
You're quite. I'm so glad you shared that with us at breakfast. There's lots of great advice there. Really helpful advice about how to help your
I
water
have to
bill.
say, after he said that, I wouldn't take up his offer to share a house.
Or an executive.
The time now is 13 minutes to 9. Democrats in the states are worried about Joe Biden as a candidate face an agonizing dilemma, given that he shows every sign of planning to continue. Should they voice their concerns publicly to add to the pressure, knowing that if he does stay put, that will damage his campaign even further? Well, in the past 24 hours, we've seen some significant interventions. The film actor George Clooney, a major fundraiser for the Democrats, has said that President Biden shouldn't run. And then overnight, we had the first Democratic senator, Peter Welch, to ask Biden to stand down. Well, I've been talking to Amanda Renteria, former National Policy Director for Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign. I wondered if the criticism coming from the Senate, where Biden spent most of his career, was significant.
Everybody knows him in the Senate. He is the guy that comes around and connects with everyone. And that still hadn't been broken. And it was broken on the day where the campaign and Biden actually shored up a lot of the House, which everybody is focused on, and shored up Democratic leaders. And so it was significant that one of his former colleagues really broke that seal. And in the way that he broke it was also pretty significant because he talked about what the implication that it has for all the other elections that are happening at the same time.
And do you think what we're seeing is politicians now saying in public what Democrats are saying behind the scenes?
What I would say is you're beginning to see people hedge their bets, really start to question whether or not this campaign can do enough, whether or not Biden's really ready for this. You know, you are seeing folks with a caring voice to it and caring bend to it, but there's concern and it's real and it's growing. The problem is we're running out of time as we move into our convention cycle.
And then there was another intervention, wasn't there, from George Clooney, not just as a celebrity, but as a major organizer of donations.
Celebrities have a platform, and that platform is incredibly important to mobilization and organization efforts of every single member of Congress and everybody running an election cycle in the Democratic Party, because generally we use those relationships to make sure people are excited, voting, understand what's going on. And so it's not actually the donor sector. President Biden's campaign very well knew how the donors felt. It's that it's a platform, a mobilization effort when celebrities start to weigh in.
Another discussion is thinking behind the scenes. Clearly they must be about who could possibly take over as candidate, most obvious person being
And this is what I think is really important for folks who are out there or anyone in the world seeing this, is there's a whole process and structure behind the scenes that needs to get set. And that part is hard to explain broadly, but there are real problems with just, you can't just turn on and off the switch. Right? He has won the Democratic nomination. He has a following. He has some folks who are out there saying it better be somewhere else. And so it is very, very important that whatever the next steps are, that President Biden is also coming along. And I think that's one of the pieces that the Democratic Party is mostly worried about, what I would have been as a national political director, where at the end of the day, the party needs to come together, and you really can't do that without President Biden's consent. Which is why you hear leaders who are super respected, have a ton, have been in this space in many different ways. Like Speaker Pelosi, who says, listen, whatever he wants to do. And part of that messaging is we have to remember that our process and our system and our ability to win still rests on the president who actually agrees with the next step that we're going to do as a party. That is the sort of charisma that needs to be navigated, or somebody in the party needs to really lead through this process so that if you do change, it is done in the right way, where he comes along and whoever steps up comes along together as a unified process. is difficult. That is difficult logistically, financially, and operationally. But there's no doubt that we have to start looking into how could that happen, if that's happening. And with the challenged us to create the most extraordinary museum in the world, and I think with hand on heart and all humility, 730,000 visitors later over the last year, we can say we have achieved that. Young V&A is a lively, optimistic museum. It's full of colour and pattern. It's a place for children to learn in their family environment, with their siblings. It's a musical doing. We wanted a night to let me down very bad. But we do have a wonderful telescope for the Tiger in our museum, which is our dedicated space to choose a sensory environment for young parents, creating around sound, colour, texture, all the themes, all the content of Young V&A is created with children. And I think this is why we've seen this astonishing, exuberant experiences of the times that visited. They come, they sort of cartwheel over the oceans and come in their micro-scooters. We had one of the judges was there, a big hope, and the judges visit. She actually saw some children arriving into a group dancing their way in. Because the whole environment is committed to the well-being creativity, this investment. And playful learning is so important, particularly this generation of children whose early years are scarred by COVID. That's absolutely, and actually this win is what we say, it's a clarion call for the vital role of creativity, culture and play in children's lives when so many opportunities have been taken away through COVID, the cost of living crisis, and underinvestment in creative education. And YouGov stats actually tell us that 38% of children are starting school and they're struggling to play with others. These key skills, communication, school readiness, and actually engaging with creativity and playful learning can really help address some of those challenges.
Well, thank you for spelling all of that out for us, and congratulations again. Helen Charman from Young V&A.
Thank you. It's 5 to 9. At 9:56 p.m. last night, as millions were dancing for joy, moments after that last gasp Ollie Watkins goal took England into the final of the Euro, David Baddiel tweeted a few short words. Well, okay, come on, it's... You didn't need to complete the sentence. We all know what the next two words are. Coming home, let's join David again. Comedian, author, and new memoir, My Family, which is out now. David, it's coming home. Do you dare say it now? Come on in.
Oh, yes, well, who knows? I mean, you say that to me now. They say, David, is it coming home? As code for, oh, we know it's been. And for a long time in this corner, I would have said it doesn't look like it. And we still have to play the best in the tournament in order for it to come home. Okay. But we played very, very well last night. We finally demonstrated that we are. You know, we are a very, very good side. We're essentially a top Premier League side with two players from Real Madrid and Bayern Munich here. And we finally looked like that last night. And let's give him some credit. I think, you know, there's this thing in football that if an English player does something brilliant, the commentator says, oh, if Messi did that, we'd never hear the end of it. When Gareth Southgate put on Cole Palmer and Ollie Watkins at the end there, taking off Foden and Kane, that's a very bold thing to do, and we should be talking about it for ages.
Well, let's talk about it, because after scoring that amazing winner, he said, Ollie Watkins, that he said to Cole Palmer, who set him up, And he predicted it. We're both coming on. He said, you're going to set me up today.
Yeah.
He knew it.
He actually said, I swear on my kid's life. I said to Cole, you give it to me. I said, you don't have to swear on your kid's life, Ollie. I believe you. So that seems like a good idea. I mean, I, as a big Cole Palmer fan, thought, oh no, it's an epic fail when he first touched the ball and completely screwed it wide. But then, when he got it in that position, that's so Cole's position as a Chelsea fan, to do something really brilliant. And that slide rule pass to Ollie Watkins was that, and then Watkins' finish was just amazing.
You see, there's a Chelsea fan. My husband's a Chelsea fan. He kept saying, it's a Chelsea assist. It was a Chelsea assist.
Yeah.
Made that goal.
And Chelsea fans have been going on a lot about the assist.
I'm going to tell you something.
But just to pour cold water a bit, let's look at Spain and what a strong side they are and how realistic it is for us to hope to come back.
Well, Spain are the best side of the tournament. They've won every game. They have two incredible wingers. They also have Rodri in midfield. They have Dani Olmo, the Studies, and Pedri have been brilliant. And the way they play is that thing, which a lot of teams don't know at international level, of just like attack and really, express themselves as brilliant footballers. And England found that hard to do, right? And when they did do it in the first half, particularly I thought Foden was unbelievable in the first half. And so I think that thing that people say that we've been slowly coming together, they've just been playing brilliantly. We might peak at the right time to just do them.
I'm getting nervous as you say this, I have to say. Now, everybody who's an England fan gets nervous, and frankly, not particularly hate England get nervous because they don't want us to win. Do you get extra nervous if we win that song that you wrote, not alone, but you wrote, it will be sung by millions and millions of people with their headlines? Do you get an extra thing in your stomach?
I do. I mean, obviously, that's a lovely thing. It's a lovely thing. It's something that me and Frank Skinner and Brody wrote. But 30 years ago now, really, it's still there. It still expresses a sort of magical hope that England can do it after all these times. And if we do it, they will still sing it. And they'll sing it despite the FA insisting that they sing Sweet Caroline instead. And so, yeah, I would be very, very, very happy to hear that song sung as a song of triumph finally, rather than just a song of hope.
And the King has ordered it, by the way. The King issued a message in which he said he wanted victory before the need for last-minute wonder goals or another penalty drama.
He said to make sure the stresses on the nation's collective heart rate and blood pressure should be greatly relieved. I think we'd all agree with that. I think you and I were both very relieved we didn't go to penalties last night.
So thank you very much indeed for listening, and whoever you support, have a really, really good day.
BBC News at 9 o'clock. The King has sent England's footballers a message urging them to beat Spain in Sunday's Euro 2024 final without the need for a last-minute goal or penalties to help alleviate the stress on the nation's heart rate. Gareth Southgate's players needed a last-gasp goal from Ollie Watkins to beat the Dutch last night and make it through to their first ever overseas final in a major tournament. The government said it was looking at whether to bring in tight controls on crossbows after one was thought to have been used in a triple murder in Hertfordshire. A man suspected of murdering the wife and two daughters of the BBC racing commentator John Hunt remains in hospital. Carol Hunt, who is 61, and Hannah and Louise, who were 28 and 25, died at a property in Bushey. The new Security Minister, Dan Jarvis, said the Home Secretary was looking closely at the law.
I know that the Home Secretary is very concerned. If there is a judgment that's made that we need to change the law, that the legislative framework that sits around this is not appropriate, then the Home Secretary will act decisively. She is looking at it. We will move at pace, and we will take a view as quickly as possible as to whether the law needs to be amended.
Water bills are set to rise by an average of £94 in England and Wales over the next 5 years. The water regulator Ofwat has given the water companies
The ignorance. Because ignorance isn't simply the opposite of knowledge. It's part of what it means to be human.
There is something overvaluing in yourself to say, I have got knowledge. No, I don't have everything. No, a man who does, or a woman.
Ignorance is inseparable from knowledge. I think embracing this can help us become more humble, creative, and wise.
If we indulge society that there's a maximal amount of information, we're going to be disappointed and we're going to do damage to others.
The long history of ignorance, from Confucius to QAnon, on BBC Radio 4. Available now on BBC Sounds.
How did the BBC do in its election coverage? In feedback at 3:30, a senior executive answer points brought up by listeners. First we'll join Claire Baldwin, who's in North West Ireland for this week's Ramblings.
That is the sound of the Atlantic Ocean on the west coast of Ireland. In County Donegal, looking out into a mist that is completely enclosing any horizon there might be, but I can see the shapes of rocks out to sea rising like a little armadillo, and there's a dark black sea stack rising in what I can only describe as a phallic shape. Anyway, over to the left, we've got the rise of these hills, very dark green with strips going through them showing calves, and there are dots of sheep across that hillside, and then the rocks coming down into the sea. Ian Miller is standing alongside me, dressed brightly in orange, so wherever you are in that landscape you'll find you, which is a good thing. This must have absolutely taken your breath away when you first saw it.
Yeah, when I first came down here, I just came for a look, followed my nose, I followed the roads, and where you're actually standing is called a port or pub, and it's the most remote, accessible public place in Ireland. You're quite correct, everything you can see is a name, and the Irish language names things how they sound or feel. So your phallic stack there is Jindal, which translates means the emptiness. Your stacks over there, stack and red, small stack, Last, the summits, everything has a name and a place, and yeah, that was good down here. Through a rock climber's eyes, I was absolutely speechless, because there's no reference to anything having been right, and then it became a mission to stand on top of the wall.
We will talk about your guiding and also your own adventures as a rock climber, and you said this has become much better known, this spot, than it ever used to be. Consequently, there are two camper vans, one called Explore and Snore, which I really like that as a title, and one sort of more traditional camper van that's clearly done its travels, but they know what they're up to because they've raised the left tyres so that the level of the floor is absolutely flat. And your van, which says Unique Ascent, and we are going to together undertake quite a steep ascent to begin with. So tell me about the route we're on here.
We're simply going to follow the coast north from here, and we're heading towards Glenlough, which is Ireland's largest raised shingle storm beach. And we'll get to the highest point overlooking it, and we'll look down and see what we can see from there.
Well, I wouldn't have known that was a path unless you led the way. We scrambled up loose rock and now walking up the edge of a wire fence. There's a sheep ahead of us lying down munching grass. If you're looking at a map of Ireland, go right over to the top left-hand side, and the whole of that edge is County Donegal. It's got the longest coastline of any county in Ireland. Right over on the edge, as far as you can go, is where we are. So you feel like you drop off to the end of the world, and beyond us is America. Very, very remote. The tracks, because they're barely roads that come in here, are single lane, grass going down the middle of them, sheep all over them, potholes, adventure. It feels like an adventure just to get here, and that's half the attraction.
Sure, there's very few places left in which you can genuinely get like an outdoor experience that isn't going to lots of other people seeking the same. And in 2 or 3 minutes' time, I can guarantee you're going to look for us to the place. And that's obviously part of the attraction.
Do you know what rock type this is? Because it's gathered in quite small little boulders, and it's white.
So this is quartzite. It's almost a sandstone, and you're about to see in a second a black vein. Your black stack is the same material, it's the same as the Giant's Causeway, and it's the same vein of rock that runs all the way up the coast of Donegal, goes across land, comes out of the Giant's Causeway, and ends up in Stafford in Scotland. And it's the reason why this coast has got so many sea stacks on it. The black basalt is much more resistant to the sea, whereas the quartz pretty much disintegrates in geological time. All the sea stacks of this coast are quartz, sitting on top of asphalt.
Steep uphill. So steep that you have to go on your tiptoes. Take very small steps.
Not a case of walking and talking, it's focus on your feet and breathing.
Time was probably only 5 or 10 minutes, but it was a real fibre. The reward is the rooftop that we have entirely to ourselves. We can look right to the north, we can look across west, we can look south. Oh. And there's not another human being anywhere. That hunk of rock there, it looks like a lying down elephant. You see the backside coming up there across its back, and then the front of its head, and then that's its trunk.
Yep, down the back.
Out there.
That's probably about 120 years ago. You would take the wee ferries that had take the sheep out and the low tide to get across, and there was sheep on that at the top of the 1850s sort of thing. Not nowadays, it's an awful lot of work.
There is seats around them, so looking at Ian Miller, County Donegal. What brought you here? Because your accent is clearly Scottish.
I got asked to help with holiday by their wife, 56 years ago, mid-90s. And we're going north for 2 weeks.
That's one of the best definitions of community that I've ever heard. It's a place that holds really.
For sure. It's in terms of outdoor activities and sports. It's not Scotland, because Scotland has got a much larger and longer history of mountaineering and rock climbing. So what you find is, for me, is getting something like rock.
And that is really big attraction to do something that has not been done before.
Oh, not that I know, but I strongly suspect no one's climbed this before. And that's the adventure aspect. And if you define adventure by an activity which the outcome is uncertain, then climbing sea stacks most certainly fits that bill. It's, over the last few years, it's become more and more popular as climbing within the Olympics, and a lot more younger people get into indoor climbing rather. But outdoor climbing in general stays the same, and the outdoor climbers in general are getting older and older. We're not being replaced. It's a big jump from climbing indoors to paddling out to a rock and climbing it in the middle of the ocean.
So that's what you do. You get on a sea kayak and get out there.
Yeah. It's either kayaks or small inflatable dinghies. Sometimes if a stack's quite close to land, say within 80 metres, and it's got quite a high surrounding cliff, like a basin around it, then I'll run a rope from the top of the cliff to the top of the stack, tension it, and then you can shimmy across on the rope, which for anybody who's got no experience, absolute, etc., it's a bit of mind boggling. You're completely on your own in the air with a tiny boat, it's 6,000 per side. It's not very easy.
No. I was walking yesterday, the program that anyone listening would have heard last week, with Nicky Bradley.
who said she credits you with giving her the confidence to do things that with a prosthetic leg and crutches she maybe would have said,
For a husband, you understand the sort of level, which is one of the highest power matches collection. And you kind of did that, and you realised that it wasn't such a big deal in terms of the anticipation as compared to the doing. And then it says, so a couple of weeks later, it's November now, and we're going to do it again, but we're going to climb Muckish, but it snowed heavily overnight. So I text her and says, let's do anything in the snow. Of course, she said, yeah, off we went. And about 300 metres from the summit, distance-wise, she said she couldn't do it. She was finished. So I just said to her, I'll tell you what, let's go on 100 metres and see how we feel. And it's got to have perspective on other people. So as a guide, I watch everybody the whole time. I read people, I read the body language, I try and join the pieces together. So if someone says they can't do something, but are clearly doing it, then that's a mental state rather than a physical state. Whereas if you've got someone who says I can't do it, and they physically can't do it, then they'll do something else that they can do. And in Nicky, it was great because once she was got a Verigo, and it was a proper winter's day, and some other people arrived and she got a standing ovation. Me and the other guy didn't, we just closed the doors. But she got a standing ovation, then she realised, hang on, I can do things. And it's just a change of next step.
it wouldn't be often though that you would have guided somebody who has one working leg and one that is in a prosthetic that's relatively new and they're trying to get to grips with the kit.
No, it's quite rare. It's also quite rare to have somebody that you've got to know well enough that you can bully into doing things within reason. You can. It's a poor analogy, but if you're looking after like a 10-year-old or a teenager and they're not doing something, you can tell white lies to keep them moving. And she knows that what I'm doing, and it just keeps the show moving, keeps her moving, and stops her starting to think. And over the years, we just went
Labour to win, so their effect on the overall mathematics in the Commons significantly greater than their seat tally would indicate.
Carrying Robinson's point about
Google
who
email?
starts the lightest.
I don't know why.
If Reform, particularly Nigel Farage, continue to come up with eye-catching statements and
Depends on
policies,
which
does
department.
that mean they'll continue to get more coverage than, for example, the Greens?
It depends whether the policies are newsworthy in the sense of, in need of scrutiny. A lot of parties did things which were eye-catching. Probably the most eye-catching party in many ways was the Liberal Democrats, because the visual stunts which were sort of meat and drink of their campaign resulted in quite a lot of media attention, and their argument was that enabled them to talk about things like water pollution. In terms of Reform, the change in leadership of Reform from Richard Tice to Nigel Farage early in the campaign was itself a major news story, and therefore the coverage of that as an incident within the campaign was a legitimate editorial point. Given that he did then take the leadership, Mr Farage, then took part in a number of debates, interviews, policy discussions across the BBC and other broadcasters, and that felt appropriate to me. And given that the share of the vote that they took at the polling day itself was significantly higher than it had been when it was the Brexit Party in the previous election, it didn't in the end feel inappropriate to me. But we will never convince all audiences that the level of scrutiny we're applying to any party is uniformly right.
Now, Ian Callaghan has made a point
Ôi,
about
go, 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 go.
discussion around
Ôi,
proportional
go,電話.
representation.
This election votes that always between the Western parties.
我唔知點去添。 喂，去阿強哥屋企啊！
There's a groundswell in the country now for introducing
都唔知點去添。
representation.
強哥有嘢俾我咁樣，定係？
raised by listeners on any answers. The BBC's absolute refusal to discuss our wildly unfair voting system continued throughout the election. That's a massive failure in terms of its basic mandate to inform and what could be more fundamental to democracy than how we elect our government and ensure everyone's vote counts. I'm not going to try to talk about it, frankly, during an election.
The politicians themselves were talking about proportional representation in this election. And in fact, the big champions of PR in the previous election cycles have been the Liberals and the Liberal Democrats in later years. In fact, their percentage of votes and their percentage of seats in the House of Commons is only 1% out. So the system has worked relatively calmly from their point of view, and they haven't said much about it. And there might be a relationship between those two facts. Some other parties scored significantly higher in vote share than in seats, and it is a legitimate matter of public concern, but it wasn't necessarily on the ballot. In other words, none of the parties were particularly proposing change as a major plank of their election manifesto. And in some ways, it's more of an interesting conversation now that we've got the results than it was in the run-up to the poll when people were making up their minds about how to vote on issues like the economy or health service or immigration or crime, as opposed to what they think the electoral system should be.
Ian also objects to the term landslide.
Although the vote share issue has been covered to some extent in BBC reporting of the election, the term that's still being used is landslide, which in terms of voter numbers going to Labour, this result absolutely was not.
So, is there a BBC edict on when the term landslide can be used?
No, there isn't any edict. There is no specific definition of it. And the point about share of the vote is absolutely right, but landslide refers to the makeup of the House of Commons and the size of that majority that you mentioned. And generally speaking, I think most people who live in the sort of psephology world are comfortable using the word landslide for any majority significantly more than 100 seats. Obviously, Labour got significantly more than that, 170 seat majority. So along with some of the very big numbers that Margaret Thatcher secured when she was Prime Minister of the Conservatives and Tony Blair when he was Labour Prime Minister, I think that term fits into that very significant Commons majority. It's not a comment on the share of the vote, which as we was not as big as some of those previous Prime Ministers. Not actually particularly much bigger than Jeremy Corbyn scored in 2019.
Now, for some listeners, there was just too much coverage of politics, and people like Peter Swallow were delighted by having a whole day free of UK politics on polling day.
Thank you, Radio 4, for nearly a whole day without having to listen to politicians refusing to answer the questions put to them, whilst repeatedly spouting the party line.
呢個係去呢度㗎，會唔會轉翻屋企喎？
Much more difficult when you're presenting solo, because you have to be
因為呢個係去呢度㗎嘛，唔係翻屋企。
and if you like, your sidekick saying, well, what's going on? I'll tell you what's going on. Well, what's going on is this has gone on. I thought they did really well. As you know, presenting is an art form. Not everybody looks at it like that, but I certainly do. And part of the art form is being able to get out. If you listen to the attempt to recover from this failed line, the irony which Emma kept bringing up, I thought she should have made more of that, to be fair. The irony of how could you believe we are trying to communicate with people who are being simulated communication online. And actually, this is probably how it's going to be, because Mars is a long way away. You know?
Long way away. To think about clever things to say, but just sometimes in that moment when whatever you were expecting to happen doesn't happen. Sometimes you can have a mental blank, actually. The words just don't come. I wonder if that's ever happened to you, where you've really thought, my goodness, what am I going to say next? What is coming out of my mouth? The one thing about radio is you can't have silence.
You can't have what we call dead air, and that is my greatest panic.
Community speed watch. 佢就喺度 speed watch.
Penalties, penalty shootouts or extra time. If you want to get it done in real time without having to go to a Euros anecdote or otherwise, but the Euros anecdote is there for you. But it is an opportunity for the presenter to show who they really are, what they're really made of, and also maybe bring in just for the listeners. You have relation with the listeners. So, well, has he got to get hold of Mars or the equivalent of Mars?
其實哥哥你有冇話我係咁向前行喎？依家冇地方行喎，依家已經。
I was telling somebody that just the other night actually. I was at the supermarket.
Oh,
And this
oh,
bloke
oh,
comes up to me and says, is this good olive oil? And I'm like, well,
Keep going down this line and keep
well,
going down this line and make a
olive
left.
oil is quadruple the price, etc. And then he says to me, well, the reason I'm asking is about Turkish. So I'm like, you're Turkish? Look me up. You're like doing really well in Europe, didn't they? The other day, especially after the kids. Oh, that really is actually brilliant when it comes to concepts. And that's what life is when you really change. You see how important it is to be. If you can't get the line, trying to communicate, find somebody to talk to. That's communication. You know, as been presented on my project, so she knows this book. She's one of our owners, we say, quite like when before my favourite today. She gave me the best education presenters that you can get. She's been to 5 Live, not Radio 4. What did you expect me to say?
Dalton Adebayo, thank you. God, last week I talked to John Wilson, the presenter of Radio 4's This Culture Life, about his leader and often revealing conversations with some of the world's leading artists and creators. It was part of our annual research and feedback interview every year, and I asked for your nominations for standout, like get out of the car moments. Thank you all so much for your suggestions, and do keep them coming. Here's one recent interview which a number of listeners flagged up this week.
Hello, I'm Marion Collier from Aylesbury. I put forward the interview with Simon Morris on the Today programme as a contender for Interview of the Year.
In September of last year, my next guest was diagnosed with throat cancer. Aged 46, Simon Morris was told it was terminal and he only had months to live. He began writing about his symptoms to his life and death in his local newspaper.
It stopped me in my tracks as I busied myself around the kitchen. I realised how scared most English people are of death, funerals, etc. This put it all into perspective as this amazing young man prepares for the end of his life.
I was fortunate enough to be able to talk to Simon last week in what we expected to be one of his very last interviews, and I started simply by asking how he was that day.
Well, I'm really well, thank you. I mean, my pains are in control, and I'm actually happy. It sounds weird to say I'm as happy as I've ever been in my life, but it's been such a great bonus, actually. I used to think I'd rather be hit by the proverbial bus, but having a couple of months knowing this is coming has really helped me go through the kind of boring death thing, and just kind of get my thoughts and prepare myself and feel so accepting of what's to come.
My name is Nigel Close from Howdale's Accommodation in Sedbergh. I have to say that we just listened to one of the most uplifting pieces we have ever heard. It's a joy to know that there is such wonderful optimism in a person and pure appreciation of the situation and the part he has played during his time on this earth.
I spent my life as an aid worker and quite a lot with the UN, and I've lived in places where death is something not just that exists in the background, but which is often kind of imminently possible.
My name is Sasha Langton-Gilks. I am calling from North Dorset. I just wanted to say that was a wonderful interview, helping dispel the vast mountain of fear surrounding conversations on death. Children also have Simon's wonderful ability. His parents and people can summon the courage to hear. I know because our child died in 2012 of a brain tumour, and we have managed to develop Simon's attitude, but it was very, very hard for us to learn to hear, and I'm so glad we did. Thank you.
Is your family in a similar place to you on this? I know you have a partner, and I know you've got a wider family of friends that you're very close to, and I was just wondering how they felt and whether they've got to a similar place to you.
Well, it's terribly difficult because, they're about to go through the most difficult thing in their lives. My lovely wife Aurelie and my parents, and it's not the natural order of things.
我哋真係諗住爸爸會識路
From
喎，
the West. I think they are, and they're well
即係我諗住爸爸會識路
surrounded.
喎。
And I think
你淨係講咗幾句，跟住就唔理啦。
Over here, you spin round left.
Spin round left.
Okay, and now this way you go down, and then you keep going down,
I thought that Emma conducted the interview with great compassion and sensitivity. It's one of the best interviews I've heard on radio for a long time. What really made me stop in my tracks was his comments about how all our lives are little books.
People will say, well, I'm glad I read that. It's a whole story. But just as it's over, doesn't mean it's gone.
As much peace and joy as possible in company with you. And
As Julian and I said, I'm sure we will. I'm sure we will. And I think we should will.
that was Emma Barnett's interview with Simon Boas, which was on the Today programme last Thursday. It's a contender for Interview of the Year and to keep the hits coming. Now, before we go, I'd really like to hear this from feedback listener Anne Collins in Glasgow. I want to say how pathetic my first time voter Archibald son was, and that he was very intelligent voting. And as she said into the seat, Jonathan Howe, general election special, I thought it was highly unusual. This will be the first election. Congratulations, I'll go so excited. I couldn't wait to go to the smoke to the office. Hello? Oh, it's very simple. When it was your role on the final period when you had to register to vote, so you just got the vote you registered, right?
Sao bị quy chồng mà?
Register.
Phần rồi à? Có phần rồi à?
And was embarrassed when the answer given on the program was, I wondered if you was a girl, wasn't lady. I also registered my son to vote. He was beautifully humiliated, but I was delighted. Anyway, after listening to the program, my son managed to trek to our local primary school to vote. He refused to say who he voted for. Anyway, he voted. So thank you, BBC Radio 4. And thank you, Anne Coles. Well, that's it for this week. From me and the team, thank you for listening and for giving us your feedback. Goodbye.
Feedback was presented by Andrea Catherwood. The producer was Pauline Moore. It was a Whistle Down Scotland production for BBC Radio 4. If you'd like to get in touch with the programme, you can send a WhatsApp voice note to 03333 444 544. 03333 444 544. You can also ring that number and leave a voice message. You can mail to feedback@bbc.co.uk.
Whether it's the sights or the sounds of every match, being closer to the action at Wimbledon makes all the difference.
She is a history maker here in Wimbledon. Please do it.
With your choice of course, get closer to the action.
Fantastic.
Wimbledon. Watch on iPlayer. Listen on BBC Sounds.
News at 4 o'clock. Water companies say the proposed rise in bills in England and Wales, sanctioned from the regulator, is nowhere near enough to fix problems such as sewage leaks affecting waterways. Ofwat has agreed a provisional increase of 21% on average pre-finished for 5 years. Hertfordshire police say they've recovered a crossbow as part of the investigations into the killing of 2 women in Bristol on Tuesday. Howard Hunt, along with Hannah and Louise Hunt, were found physically injured at their home and died of their injuries. One suspect, 26-year-old Hannah Clifford, remains in serious condition in hospital, and known he was the former boyfriend of Louise Hunt. Plans to release some prisoners early have been announced by the government tomorrow to deal with overcrowding in jails in England and Wales. Keir Starmer has described the state of prisons as a shocking indictment of the previous Conservative administration and a clear breach of government. Ian Lawrence is General Secretary of the union represents probation and primary court staff.
Therefore, I'm not opposed to the concept of use business and determined
Biết
sentences,
gì mình đấy.
but this is an important part
Tiếng Âu rồi cao.
as the determined space for the calculations to be made in terms of particular business circumstances and the risk assessment. Because it needs to be a phased introduction of this type of change of direction.
The manhunters then launched after 2 suitcases containing human remains were found at the Clifton Suspension Bridge in Bristol. Police were called after a man was seen acting suspiciously on the bridge just before midnight last night. He'd gone by the time they arrived. Apple has struck a deal with the European Union to allow access to viable mobile payment systems within the EU. The company is facing a big fine for blocking alternatives to its own tap-and-go technology, Apple Pay. At its peak, 21.6 million people tuned in to watch England's semi-final match of Euro 2024 on ITV last night. The figure is the highest the channel has seen since December 2022, when the nation watched England's quarter-final exit from the World Cup. BBC News.
We'll be visiting Centre Court at Wimbledon in half an hour here on Radio 4, but we won't be talking about aces, double faults or strawberries. Our focus will be on the grass.